Hey, I'm your storyteller. I'd love to know where you're watching from. You can tell me in the comments section. When you are ready, lean back, and let's dive into this week's horror stories. I never thought something like this could actually happen to me. I've always been the type of person who assumed scary stories about home invasions were overblown, that you could lock your doors, keep your phone close, and nothing bad would ever happen. I was wrong. It happened 2 years ago when I was 15. My parents were out for the evening. They had some kind of work thing and didn't expect to be back until around 10. I had the house to myself. Usually I loved that. I could blast music, play games as loud as I wanted, make a huge mess and not worry about anyone yelling at me. I was in my room playing a new game on my console, headphones on, completely tuned out. Around 8:30, I went to grab a snack from the kitchen. I dumped a bag of chips into a bowl, and as I walked back to my room, I noticed something odd. The basement door was slightly open. I remember thinking, weird. I could have sworn I closed it this morning. My parents are usually really strict about locking it. I stepped closer and nudged it gently with my shoulder. It didn't swing open easily, but it wasn't locked either. I hesitated, then pushed it fully open. The basement was dark. My parents keep all the lights off unless they're down there, so I couldn't see much. I called out, "Hello?" half laughing at myself. "Mom? Dad?" I thought I locked this. Obviously, there was no answer. I laughed to myself, shrugged, and went back to my room. A few minutes later, however, I heard something. Faint, almost imperceptible at first. A creak. Not the floorboards, but something from the basement. Like someone had stepped on the bottom step. I took off my headphones and listened. My stomach sank. The sound repeated, slow and careful. I thought maybe it was a raccoon or some other animal. Our house is old, and the basement sometimes had critters. I told myself that as I went back to my game trying to act normal. Then I heard another sound. A shuffle. Definitely not an animal. This was deliberate, human. I didn't move at first. I stayed in my chair, hoping I was wrong. I grabbed my phone and dialed my parents' number. No answer. I called my neighbor. No answer. Panic started to settle in. I didn't know if the basement door had been open the whole time, or if someone had broken in while I was getting a snack. I didn't know if they were still there waiting or if they'd already moved to the main floor. I put the phone down, trying to think. I considered locking myself in my room, but then I remembered the front door. It was downstairs. I considered making a run for it, but if someone was hiding, they could see it and catch me if I tried to leave. But maybe it was just an animal. I grabbed a flashlight from my drawer, and I took a deep breath. I went outside my room and down the stairs carefully. It was dead silent in my house. The living room was clear, no one was there. That only confirmed my belief that it was an animal. So I went over to the basement door. The basement stairs creaked under my weight. My flashlight beam lit up the corner of the basement, illuminating shelves with paint cans, boxes of old clothes, and the water heater. Nothing moved, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I took a few steps down. Then something caught my eye. The corner behind the shelves looked different. The shadows looked weird. My pulse picked up. I stepped closer and noticed something else. A pile of clothes on the floor. Not mine, definitely not my parents'. Someone had taken off shoes and jackets down there. My brain was screaming at me, but I had to know. "Who's there?" I called loud. My voice sounded small in the big empty basement. Suddenly there was a movement in the shadows. A shuffle toward the far wall. I yanked my flashlight in that direction. That's when I realized there was an actual stranger in my home. They were crouched behind a stack of boxes trying to hide. I didn't scream. I felt paralyzed. My whole body got goosebumps. I couldn't even process it fast enough. I just froze in place, holding the flashlight like it could somehow keep them at bay. I remembered my parents' spare key under the mat and the house phone upstairs. I needed help. I backed up carefully, keeping my eyes on the figure. They didn't move, just stayed low and still, breathing softly. I ran upstairs and locked the basement door, then called 911. While I was on the phone, I could hear footsteps moving below. I don't know how long it lasted, maybe a minute, maybe longer. The dispatcher stayed on the line while I barricaded myself in my room. Police arrived within 10 minutes. They found a man hiding in the basement, crouched behind the same stack of boxes. He had a backpack with gloves and a small flashlight. According to the officers, he had been in the neighborhood for days, checking houses while people were out. I had been lucky. He hadn't tried to come upstairs, and he didn't resist when they took him out. I couldn't stop shaking that night. My parents came home and were just as horrified as I was. They kept asking why I hadn't called sooner. I told them I was scared to leave my room and that even now I still couldn't believe it had actually happened. The basement was cleaned out after that, and we installed new locks on every door and window. I never go down there alone now, and I always check twice if the door's locked when I'm home alone. I've never shared this publicly before, but something happened to me a few months ago in my apartment, and it still gives me chills. I had just moved into a small basement unit in an older building. Nothing fancy, but it was cheap and close to school. I liked that it had a little extra space down there, though honestly I mostly used it for storage and my desk. Everything seemed normal at first. Creaky floors and the usual smells you get in a basement. Then, about a week after moving in, I started noticing something odd with the air vent. It's one of those old rectangular ones in the corner. Metal grate, easy to remove. Sometimes late at night, I'd hear it rattle, like a loose grate. At first, I thought it was just the heating kicking in, but the sound didn't match the heater. It would start rattling when the heat wasn't on. One night around 2 a.m., I heard it again. More persistent this time, like a scratching noise. I grabbed a flashlight, knelt down, and carefully removed the vent cover. That's when I noticed the scratches. They were deep, claw-like marks on the inside of the duct. Not just random scratches. They trailed toward the back of the vent like something had been trying to climb inside. My stomach sank. I shined the flashlight down the duct as far as I could see. Faint, more subtle scratch marks led along the metal toward the wall at the far end of the basement. I closed the vent back up and went back to bed, telling myself I was overreacting. Maybe the previous tenants had done something weird, or maybe it was some kind of pest. Rats or squirrels, right? The next night, it happened again. Only this time, the noise moved. I was sitting at my desk when I heard a scraping sound from the vent nearest to me. The sound shifted, like something was moving through the vents. From one corner of the basement to the other, rattling and scraping, following the path of the vents. I couldn't figure it out. The building management said the heating ducts were fine, no signs of pests. I tried staying up, shining my flashlight into each vent, but nothing ever appeared. The noises were always just out of reach, moving from vent to vent. One night I had my friend over. We were trying to joke about it, calling it a vent monster, but then it started again. The vent closest to me rattled violently, then the next one over, then another across the room. My friend stopped joking and just stared at me, wide-eyed. Neither of us said a word as the sound slowly circled the basement. After that night, I installed a temporary vent cover and taped it in place. I moved my desk, kept my bedroom door closed. I still hear faint scratching sometimes, especially when it's quiet outside. I've checked the vents multiple times since then. Nothing moves inside. No one's in the building. No signs of entry. But those scratch marks have to be related to whatever it is. Could it be human? As I'm writing this, it's quiet, but I have no doubt it'll start again soon. I've considered installing a small security cam to see if I can catch whatever it is on video. I'll send in an update once more stuff happens. I live alone in a small 2-story house. The basement is unfinished, just concrete walls and a few storage shelves. When I moved in, I checked the locks on the basement door out of habit. They all worked fine. I didn't think much about it after that. The first time it happened, I woke up around 3:30 a.m. I usually sleep through the night, but I had this weird feeling that something was off. When I got out of bed, the basement door was open. I remember clearly that I had locked it before going to sleep. The knob was turned slightly, the door just wide enough to see the dark steps leading down. I closed it up and went back to bed, not thinking much about it. I went down in the morning to check. There was nothing. Absolutely nothing. Everything was exactly where it should be. The door worked perfectly, and the locks were intact. I began to think I had dreamed it all. The next night, I made sure it was locked again. But same thing. I woke up and the door was open. This went on for almost a week. Every night, without fail, the door would be open by morning. I checked the locks each time, deadbolts, latch, everything. None of them had been tampered with. I started setting up a little system. I placed a small piece of tape across the door frame to see if it had been moved. In the morning, the tape was always broken. Not torn or stuck to the wall, just broken as if the door had been nudged open carefully but with strength. Finally, one night I decided to wait. I went to bed later than usual, pretending to sleep, and kept my eyes on the door. I was nervous, but I wanted to see what was happening. Around 1:45 a.m., I heard a faint click, the sound of the latch moving. The door slowly swung open just a little. I held still. The house was quiet. I must have sat there for hours just staring at that basement doorway. Nothing moved. No shadows. No noises. After a while, I started telling myself I was just freaking out over nothing. Maybe the latch was actually loose and the door had swung open on its own. I was dead tired, but I couldn't calm down enough to fall asleep. Then, sometime after 2 a.m., I saw something. At first, I thought it was my eyes playing tricks, like when you stare into the dark too long and think you see movement. But this was different. A shape leaned forward in the doorway, slow. My lamplight didn't reach that far, but I could tell it was tall, solid, darker than the shadows around it. And then it stepped out. I heard it too, bare feet pressing against the wood floor. My chest was pounding so hard I was sure it would give me away. The figure moved so casually, not even looking at me. It just walked past the doorway and headed toward the front of the house, like it lived there. I couldn't move. I just stayed there, listening to the floorboards creak under its weight until everything went silent again. Eventually, I forced myself to move. I grabbed the baseball bat by my dresser and crept into the hall, heart going crazy in my chest. But the hallway was empty. So was the living room, the kitchen. The front door was locked, the windows were locked. Nothing was missing, nothing was disturbed. It was just my house, perfectly still. When I turned back toward the basement, the door was wide open. Just this black yawning hole at the bottom of the stairs. I couldn't make myself go down there. I slammed it shut, latched it, shoved a chair in front of it, and went back to my room. I didn't sleep a second that night. In the morning, everything looked normal. The basement was empty. No sign anyone had ever been there. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. Someone came up from that basement and walked through my house like they owned it. And the worst part is, I never heard them leave. I put the house up for sale. I can't take much more of this, and whatever poor soul ends up buying it from me, I hope whatever that creature is will leave them alone. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, as it shows the YouTube algorithm that you enjoy my content. I'll see you next week for another horror story video.